Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be doing another live question and answer with you. That's really actually one of my favorite things because then I'm really talking to what you're asking about. I'm very grateful for all of you who decided to become Instagram subscribers or YouTube members. It really makes it possible for us to just keep doing this and keep making lots of offerings. If any of the subjects that I talk about in this context or on the brief Instagram accounts, there's long form versions. I mean, as many hours as you ever want to listen to on YouTube. I've been recording and posting for years. Karma, reincarnation, the chakra is very important. The cycles of civilization on the planet. There's a whole uh, group called spirituality and daily life, intuition, God's will, many things. So you can find short versions on Instagram and you can find long versions on YouTube. And in every way, um, getting deeper into understanding the nature of these teachings of self realization, I deeply believe will help you. It'll help give you a pole star, some sense of comprehension about how to navigate through what are certainly increasingly difficult times. So let's get started.
Okay, hello everyone. The first question that we have today.
Wait, pause,
Yes.
come and show them your face, Ishana, so you're not just a nothing voice.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
She is what makes it all possible. Okay, let's go.
Okay, so the first question is, how do I know if it's my karma?
Well, the answer to that is actually quite short if it's happening to you. It's just as simple as that because everything that happened, okay, this is an energy universe. This is not a material world. I mean, let me phrase it differently. It's a material world, but behind matter is a vibration of energy. This is modern physics. This isn't even religion or spirituality. This is just the accepted understanding of those who are not thinking about God or anything like that. They're just examining the nature of the universe. It's energy patterns. Energy responds to magnetism. We have energy patterns in our chakras, and this is why I refer you above all to the long classes on the chakras, class series that I've given. If you can understand the chakras, everything else follows from that. The chakras are the energy body, which is everything that manifests in this world manifests from that energy pattern in the chakras. And and magnetism is impersonal. You don't have to have God in the story to understand magnetism. The story makes a lot more sense when you have God, but magnetism is just when I was a child and learning to sew, one of the few things I learned as a child, I always kept magnets in my sewing kit, just little magnets, because when I'd get bored sewing, I'd play with the pins. You know, you put the magnets out and you could attract the pins in all directions. And when you use the wrong end of the magnet with two magnets, you could repel. And you just see this pattern of how energy, quite impersonally, just does what it does. So the energy pattern of our chakras attracts to us experiences. The energy pattern of the chakras is your karma. That's how your karma passes from lifetime to lifetime. And so if there's an energy pattern that attracts an experience to you, it wouldn't come to you unless it was your karma to happen. It's as simple as that. Now, what you may also be asking is how important is this karma? How vital is it to my life? How much energy do I have to put in response to it? And those are more subtle questions. Those are questions that have to do with the direction that you're trying to go in your life, the specific nature of the karma. And the other part of it, it's very important to realize it's not so much what happens to you externally, it's what it activates within you. Because all of these energy patterns, the material manifestation of it is just to make it clear to you, but what you're trying to actually understand is the energy pattern, because it's changing the energy pattern that actually resolves and liberates you from the karma. So if something has come to you, you have to ask yourself, what is this activating in me? And if it's just a casual response on your part, then it's your karma, but it's not karma that you have to devote your life to studying. But if it activates a big response in you, then you need to behave accordingly because it's giving you a big message and that message needs to be heard. And if it's ignored, keeps um, uh, it keeps increasing and until it gets your attention. So that's at least gives you a beginning idea of what the answer is.
Well, then the second question, maybe following up with that, is what is my karma trying to teach me?
Well, see, that's entirely individual. Sometimes people, I'll use physical illness as an example, and what I'm saying is not consistent with what others say sometimes. So I'm offering you what I learned from Swami Kriyananda, what he learned from Paramahansa Yogananda. These are both great spiritual teachers of our times. And so this is how I understand it. For example, some people will say about physical illness, if it affects your throat, it means this. If you're affected your heart, it means this. If it affects your liver, your kidney, it means this. And to a certain extent, those are consistent and very those can be very helpful principles. But no single template of this means this will apply to everyone. What you have to ask yourself is what qualities of either rejection or embracing is this experience giving to me? For example, if something happens to your heart, which makes you very debilitated, and your great fear is becoming incapable of taking care of yourself, that could also happen from a terrible accident to your legs, or something that happens to your head. But the response in you is a fear of not having personal power and being in control. Or something could happen to your heart, and then something predictably heart oriented could happen, like a profound feeling of loneliness or just overwhelming sadness or something like that. But the question is, what issue is this catalyzing in me? The circumstances do not create the karma. The circumstances are drawn to you because the karma is within you and it's time for it to come to your conscious awareness. So, of course, the circumstances give you clues. There's no question about that. But the real battlefield is within yourself. How am I responding? What weakness is it revealing? What unpleasantness is it revealing? What strength is it unveiling? What delight is it bringing to me? And then that's the answer. And depending, of course, on the nature of what is revealed, then the response has to be in accordance with that.
So this is a maybe even further continuation. Is it possible to work on your inner self and erase your karma, or do you need to learn through situations like poverty and disease?
It depends on how avid a student you are. Once again, this is the very tricky part of it. External circumstances catalyze the lesson. They are not in themselves the lesson. Okay? But poverty, for example, could be given to you because you need to raise your energy level. You need to develop your willpower. You need to develop a solution consciousness. You need to become more creative. You need to get over being so easily discouraged. And poverty and the need or the desire for wealth could be a tremendous incentive to that, or taking care of others because they need the money or whatever it might be. So it isn't about the money per se, but the money can be an enormous incentive for you to develop the inner qualities that you wouldn't develop unless you were absolutely pushed to the wall and you had no choice. So the circumstances do matter because they are often the roadmap that'll tell you what it is that you're supposed to be learning here. And simultaneously, if you lose something that you love, if someone that you cared about dies or leaves you or betrays you in some way, then all of a sudden you get to examine, your relationship to other people, your trust in life, your judgment about what other people do, your willingness to listen when others tried to give you good advice and you preferred to be in denial rather than listening. but it's listening, it's being in denial, it's feeling that your happiness comes from other people rather than from your inner strength. You see, all of the circumstances drive you back to that. And the whole purpose of human incarnation, and this gets us back right to ground level. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? And most people take the most obvious answer to that question. Well, we're here, to be comfortable and to have it easy and to not have many challenges and to control the external environment so that everything will go just the way we want it to go. But what level of wisdom is drawing those conclusions? Is it our ultimate destiny, or is it just I want today to be like this and the consequences be damned? And and then therefore karma does not work unless you put in reincarnation. I mean, karma, it's not completely true. Karma works a little, but the whole story does not work if you define life as when you're born and when you die. And that's why all these tremendous death and return stories are so important, because now it's not just the scriptures and the sages and the masters and the saints sort of trying to tell us life is quite different than it seems. Now, ordinary people are dying, having this extraordinarily different perspective, and then coming back and telling us about it. That everything that's happening here is quite different than we think it is. Now, the weird problem is almost none of us remember our past lives, or we remember, but we don't know we're remembering our past lives. That's the best way I can say it. The ordinary person, most of us, do not have a perspective that includes before we were born and after we die. But there is something in us, and this is how the story works. There's something in us that knows we were meant to be happy, that knows we were not meant to suffer. And so we translate that into happiness is my birthright and I want to be happy. And then we start thinking in the sort of smallest time frame about what will make me happy. And we often are very, very selfish and very inconsiderate and very unwise. I'll drink, I'll smoke, I'll be very hedonistic, I'll just laze about, I'll eat lots of chocolate, whatever it might be, as if there were no consequences for our own behavior. Then we get the consequences of our own behavior. Sometimes they don't catch up to us until the end of an incarnation. And then part of it realizes, oh, if I had put in different causes, I would have different results now. And so we're maybe a little bit wiser the next lifetime. Maybe we're just more intensely rebellious. It depends on how good a student we are. But the magic of human life is that gradually we wake up and we gradually get a bigger perspective, whether that comes from actual expanded sight or just from the memory of all these experiences. I was 18 when I became very interested in health. I mean, almost to a fanatical degree for a while, although I've calmed down about that. But I just knew it was vitally important to take care of my body, to give it the right food, to make sure it hydrated, to exercise, to let it have proper rest. I just had to do it. And as a result, by the grace of God, I've had pretty good health this whole lifetime. I've had very good health. But it occurred to me about 40 years into it, oh, I've been sick in many lifetimes. I've abused my body and therefore had the consequences. And some part of me, as soon as I was almost an adult and had control over it, some part of me, not my conscious mind, but my subconscious said, honey, you better do it differently this time, or you're really going to suffer. So over our own experiences, we learn from our suffering how to live more in harmony with divine law, because we cannot make it up. We can try to make it up. We can insist that my way is right, but they're divine laws that govern the universe, just like they're physical laws. You cannot say gravity will not make this pen fall. I can say it 100 times And every time I drop it, it falls. Oh, look, let me try it again. No gravity, no gravity. It's like that. So we can claim that I can live any way I want, I can think any way I want, it won't have consequences. Try it, see if it works. And that's what we do, life after life after life, until something in us begins to remember. And it's hidden from us, and that's part of the story, and I don't know why. But it's not hidden from us because we are drawn in certain ways toward certain things because there is something that we have to learn. We have learned, we need to express something new we have to learn. And that's why the world is like it is. And that's why so much challenge and suffering comes to us, because the purpose is for us to grow. Because that longing for happiness can only be fulfilled when we accept the inevitability, the inescapability of the way we are made and the way God made the universe. You might not like it, but try it. See if it'll be different this time.
Uh, Thank you, Asha. This is from one of your members, and I'm so sorry. I don't think I can pronounce your first name, but last name is Foley. Asha, thank you. Aren't the death and return stories, which I viewed a great deal, aren't they a creation of the mind and therefore unreliable?
Well, if you think they are, they are. I mean, no, they're not. At a certain point, let me think how to say this. At a certain point, you can deny evidence as much as you want to. It's a question of whether it intuitively strikes you as being true, whether it's consistent with the wisdom of the ages, whether saints and masters for millennia have been saying the same thing. Or you can say, well, just one guy had a delusion. But a lot of people are having a very similar delusion. And a great deal of what they're saying is very consistent with the wisdom of the ages. So you can doubt it. I mean, that's perfectly reasonable to doubt and to try to find a lesser explanation. And if that satisfies you, then there's no other answer as long as that satisfies you. But there comes a point where I'm more interested in new information. A person is more interested in expanding their sense of the possible rather than taking anything out of the ordinary and trying to pull it back into the ordinary. There's a tremendous commitment in our society now to materialism and atheism. Just any explanation other than the idea that we are part of a greater reality and that there is a higher power and that power is divine. And it's largely because so much of religion has become so dogmatic and so narrow that one is disinclined to believe it. When I was teaching a lot of beginning meditation classes, and I'm a devotee, I talk about God, I talk about a relationship with Guru, I talk about saints and masters all the time. And so people would say, well, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God. Can I still practice meditation? And I would say, tell me about the God you don't believe in. And then they would tell me some story about whatever they picked up, mostly from conventional religion. And I would say, well, I don't believe in that God either. It's just much too small and too unsatisfying. But when I was introduced to Sanatana Dharma, which is the ancient teaching that has been preserved in India, that is not Hinduism or any of the religions. There's revelation and then there's religion. Revelation is the direct perception of that which is, of higher realities. Religion is what human mind does with it afterwards. And what's happening to these death and return people is they're having a revelation and they know it's true because you just know it's true. When you have a revelation, that's what makes it a revelation. Einstein, his understanding of the energy nature of the universe was not created by his mind. He perceived it. He just perceived it. And then he spent 10 years, as I understand it, working out the mathematics or whatever it was, because I don't understand it, that explained, but he saw it first. And so it is with these death and return. They just see it, which is why for many of them, for many years, they would never tell anyone because there was no way to explain it. So then you tell it to someone who hasn't had the revelation, and sure, you can easily say, well, you're making that up. But the person who had the experience knows that they're not. I mean, how do we know anything? How do you know that you even exist? You know that you exist because you exist. You're inside your own consciousness and it's inescapable. You can't escape it. You exist. You don't have to reason it out. It just is true. That's how these death and return experiences are for the people who have them. It's a revelation. But if it doesn't resonate with you, then it doesn't resonate. And then you need to go where it makes sense to you. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Asha. What if I was a terrible person in a previous life? Is there a way to overcome this karma or be forgiven?
We were all terrible persons in our past lives. Sri Yukteswar, who is the guru of Paramahansa Yogananda in the Indian system, he's a Param guru. Yogananda is my guru. Yogananda's guru is my Param guru, my grandfather guru. Sri Yukteswar said, quite simply, the past lives of all men and women, are dark with many shames. And that's just a fact. Because here's some just interesting principles that Yogananda put forward. He said, anything that you're not inclined to do anymore is because you tried it and you know it's not going to make you happy. Now, the wonderful thing about great big ideas is if they're true, you can usually bring them down to something that you actually understand. Think about anything that you're not inclined to do anymore that is unsavory to you now. The reason you don't want to do it is because it doesn't make you happy. You know it doesn't. You know, if you overeat on chocolate, if you never get out of bed, if you never take a shower, if you're mean to everybody around you, if you constantly fight with your boss at work, if you're lazy in your job and you just don't care and you don't do anything, it has consequences. You experience those consequences, and the consequences are so terrible that you change your action, right? Now, according to the principles of Sanatana Dharma, of this ancient teaching from the East, is over our incarnations, we only learn from experience. And therefore, we get to try out anything that we think is going to make us happy. We see people of high intelligence and education, even now, who feel that what will make them happy is to have power over others. And the more meanly and cruelly and selfishly they exercise that power, the more it makes them strong and wonderful. We see relatively good people who become addicted to drugs, who then do awful things to the people that they love. But they're all doing it because they think it's going to make them happy. We never do anything unless we think it's going to make us happy and diminish our suffering and increase our happiness. Many of our decisions are exceedingly stupid and just transparent to us eventually. But at the time we're doing it, seemed like a good idea. So, according to the Sanatana Dharma, all of the things that we no longer are inclined to do is because we tried them and it didn't work. And that is going to mean that we did a lot of really bad things in our past life. But they were only ideas, they were only wrong thoughts. And we do create a certain flow of energy, and that energy will have consequences, but we can reverse those consequences by learning the lesson and by putting out the opposite energy. So if you have an inclination either by intuition or a psychic reader or whatever it might be, that you behaved in a certain way in the past that was not good, well, then put out the balancing energy now. Just be especially careful in regard to that particular way of being. Or if you just generally have a feeling that you were, not who you wanted to be, let that be an incentive to start building an entirely other way of being. The only difference between the worst sinner, so to speak, and the greatest saint is the way they behave. Think about that. The worst criminal, if he has a revelation, can become the greatest saint the next day. And you have stories of that because inherently We are divinely good. However, we get confused. That's all. We just get confused. So sure, you made mistakes in the past, but now you have learned. I'll give you a very interesting story about this. I've had one really dynamic and absolutely true dream about a previous incarnation. Swami Kriyananda confirmed it. And in that incarnation, somebody who was in my life now, with whom I had a very difficult relationship, very filled with distrust and anger and so on, that person had treated me very, very badly in that previous incarnation. You know, the kind of stuff they make epic movies about. So then that person heard that I had this dream. I didn't tell them, but somebody must have told them. So they went to a psychic and found out about the horrible things that I'd done to them, which was also true. Swami Kriyananda confirmed both, and I believe it's all true. So now we really had a reason to be mad at each other because 17 centuries ago this happened, and 2 centuries ago that happened, and you were such a terrible person. So we were really at it. And then Swami had to bring us together. I mean, it was so bad. And he said, first thing he said was, I'm inclined to believe that those past lives are true, which was, not very flattering to either of us, he said. But then he said, but you suffered from what you did. You learned, and you would never be like that again. Story over. That's all. There's no such thing as eternal damnation. We just make mistakes. We learn from them. We face the consequences. We put out new energy in a new direction, and we become somebody else. Yogananda also said, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. And that's the incentive that you want for yourself.
Okay, this is a little bit of a different direction. So this person writes, I want to let go of being mad at my mother, but even though I know that karma is an unlearned lesson, I just can't let go of being a victim.
Anything that is a really big aspect of your nature will also manifest in many smaller ways. I specifically had a woman came to me with exactly this issue, extreme anger at her mother with good cause, which makes it much harder. It wasn't a projection, unfortunately, or fortunately, because it was a good learning experience. She had a very, very difficult mother. So I said to her, I said, well, your response to mistreatment is to be so angry. I presume that manifests in other areas of your life. Oh, no, she said, just my mother. But I knew this woman, so I knew a little bit more. It would be anger like, who left the dishes in the sink? Who didn't wash them? Or what a terrible driver. Why is he doing that? Just a tendency to respond like it ought to be different. And see, that's what you're saying to your mother. It ought to be different. Somebody did something to me. Now, a relationship like a mother, to the child, is a relationship that is so immense and has so many threads that it's not likely to be something that you can just turn and change because it's just too big. But what you want to do is you want to break the habit. You want to undermine it. You want to fight the battle where it's easier so you can gradually break the habit of responding like a victim. So what I would suggest is I would take the whole question of your mother, your anger at your mother, and your sense of victimhood in regard to your mother, put it on the shelf. Just put it on the shelf for now. And now start paying very, very close attention to how many times every day in every other situation you rebel against circumstances and try to, with your willpower, force it to be different. I don't mean a conscientious, calm program of transformation. I mean the same, I am a victim and I will not be happy until outer circumstances are different. Often the very big, hard one that we can't escape is given to us to awaken us to the underlying attitude that we have toward life itself. So start a very serious program of introspection And consider it to be of utmost importance, no matter how small the event, to train yourself to respond differently, to respond with kindness towards yourself, with power within yourself. I am not a victim. I am master of my own destiny. I can face into whatever has been given to me with calm, kind courage. I don't have to feel helpless in the face of fate. And you will find that you will gradually transform your whole understanding, which will then give you the strength to face into the really big issue. I actually, now that I'm thinking about this, there was a time in my life when I realized that I had a fairly harmonious temperament, but I really didn't have a harmonious temperament. What I actually had was a terrible fear of conflict, just terrible fear of conflict. So I decided that I needed to learn to stand up for myself. And it wasn't important for me to be nice. It was important for me to be truthful and courageous in expressing what I felt. As it happened, I was living in New York City for that summer. The only time I've lived on the East Coast. I'm a Californian for most of my life. California is kind of mellow compared to New York City. In New York City, people are much more outspoken, much more frank, much more feisty. So it was a perfect place to be. So I started fighting for my rights everywhere that I was in New York. I'd take the taxi cab rather than let somebody butt in front of me. I'd call the grocer on the fact that he's putting his thumb on the scale and trying to charge me more than he should have charged me. I wouldn't let anybody cut in line in front of me. If somebody was rude, I'd be rude back to them. I mean, I just broke the habit. And then I began to enjoy it. And then I realized that I'd gone too far and I backed up. All of that is interesting. But let me tell you, there was one huge relationship in my life at that point where I really needed to stand up for myself. And I didn't. It took me 5 more years before I stood up for that one. But it started when I told the grocer not to overcharge me for the vegetables. They seemed utterly unrelated, but I was transforming myself. That's what I was doing.
Okay, so this is an interesting question. Can a body hold more than one soul at a time?
Can about no, not in a healthy way, not at all. There's one jiva manifesting one body. I heard that question slightly differently. Very advanced yogis apparently can inhabit more than one body at the same time because they can work out their karma faster. So one jiva, very advanced jiva means soul, individual. It is said, I mean, this is just a fact of yoga teaching. I have no experience. They can incarnate in more than one body at the same time. But the way it is that there is one karmic pattern. And if you have two souls and two karmic patterns, it's a mess. And that's what possession is. And there's no wholesome possession. If it's sometimes souls that have died that are not in physical manifestation wish to have material experiences, and they will try to take over. So you can have more than one spirit in trying to influence the body, but it is not a wholesome thing to have happen. Let me think. I don't. I'm hesitating because I don't want people to become afraid of it. But it is not something to mess around with, because then your own karmic pattern is already very complicated. And when somebody else tries to impose their karmic pattern on top of the one that you have, it does not work out well. This woman that I know who became involved in that sort of thing, and she basically surrendered her body periodically, and would sort of let someone else run her body. She realized that she was being shut out of her own life. She had vast periods in her own life when she wasn't able to live her own life, and it was extremely unhealthy. So I highly recommend that you do not mess around with anything like that.
Okay, so how can I stay steady in a world that seems so unpredictable and shaky and full of chaos?
Well, that is the big issue that we're all facing right now, isn't it? It's always true, but sometimes it's more dramatically true. I mean, our individual karma is to be part of global and national karma. I mean, the nations and planets develop a momentum, an energetic momentum. So we're sort of like passengers in a train that's racing down the track, and we're in that train. We chose to incarnate at this time and at this place, and it's not a smooth ride, and it promises to be an even rougher ride. So it's a very good question to ask. There is only one security in that world, in this world. There's only one security in creation, and that is for us to have expanded our self understanding, to open ourselves to a higher reality, to God and the divine presence, to the angelic beings that are always there to help us. And that is the only point of security. Everything else is constantly changing, and to a very large extent beyond our capacity, well, period, beyond our capacity to control. The karma of the planet is playing itself out. Individual souls are being given the opportunity to learn what they don't know, and many of them have very hard they have very hard energy, and that energy is manifesting as war and conflict and prejudice and unspeakably awful things. The only the only escape from fear, anger, frustration, many, many, many things, is to realize that God is in charge, and that it I would not have incarnated at this time and at this place if it wasn't going to be for the benefit of my ultimate awakening. And clearly I, meaning my higher self, when I was in the astral world between lifetimes, go onto the YouTube channel and type in all these questions, and you'll find long, long conversations about how this works. When we are in the astral world between incarnations, we, in consultation with our angels, with our guardian angels and God and Guru, we say, okay, what am I ready to learn next? And what circumstance will be ideal for me to be able to learn it? We think, where will I find it easy and be happy and have everything go just the way I want it when we're in our limited understanding? But our higher self says, no, you're on a long journey to God realization, to perfect bliss. And now you need to face a lot of really difficult challenges. All of us who are here, you need to learn to hold on to your faith and the inner light, regardless of what's going on around you. You need also to have the strength to be able to serve others and to help others also hold on to that inner light. You need to face all your fears. And here we are, friends. How do we do it? By serious, dedicated inner work to change our sense of reality to a deeper inner understanding of what causes suffering and what brings happiness. And I think now is a really good time to really get serious about it, because it's already pretty tricky, and all the indications are that it's going to get worse before it gets better. I do not take this lightly. This is one of the many reasons why I've dedicated myself for so long. I have suffered. We've all suffered. And I feel that what I have learned from my teachers that I'm trying to share with you is really the answer to it. But it requires commitment, dedication, willpower, um, sufficient study and introspection that you become persuaded that this is really a valid solution, and then the determination to follow through on it, and the faith that Divine Mother loves us. And whatever difficulties come to us, she will also give us the strength to face them. Not necessarily easily and not necessarily painlessly, but if you really look at your own life, you will see that some of your greatest lessons came from the hardest circumstances. So now it's getting harder because the lessons are going to be greater. And the freedom and the power and the joy that's going to come to us from facing into those challenges and holding on to our greater understanding no matter what will bring us rewards commensurate with the challenge that we've overcome. Ah.
Thank you, Asha. Okay, this person asks, how can I work out my karma faster?
It's a matter of energy. You work out your karma with courage, willpower, and energy. And and faster is relative. Work it out at all. It depends entirely on you. How courageous are you? How disciplined are you? How consistent are you? How attentive are you? All of those things completely in your hands. Just how you work out your karma faster is you just do it. There's no shortcut though. People are always asking me for shortcuts. There isn't one. So a large part of how you work it out faster is stop worrying about working it out faster. Just do it. Just do what's in front of you. Faster is what? I mean, now that I stop and think about it, what is faster? The problem is as big as it is, and it's energy that's going in a way that may not be making you happy. So you need to put out energy in the direction to balance it. If you've been selfish, you need to become generous. If you're angry, you need to become calm. If you're afraid, you need to become courageous. There's no faster to that. It's just, and see, even the idea of faster is rebelling, and rebelling doesn't really work. I want it to be different. I want it to be different must be translated into, therefore, this is how I will make it different. And every time I fail, I will pick myself up. Every time I have a wrong attitude, I will correct it. Every time I misunderstand, I will seek out greater wisdom. I won't just keep trying to insist that it has to be different because it won't be. I had a friend who was in my classes for many years when I was teaching more more in person. And he would ask very good questions, lots of them, but there was a pattern to his questions. And the pattern was, isn't there a shortcut? No, actually, there isn't. But you just have to get serious and then put your energy behind it.
This is an interesting question. Can one's lifetimes overlap? Could I have met my older past or younger future self? If time doesn't exist, then does this seem possible?
Well, people play with a lot of that, and I've had the opportunity to ask Swami Kriyananda these questions before. Someone asked me once, "Can you reincarnate backwards in time? Can you live in the 1900s, now in the 1700s, and then in the 2000s backwards and forward?" Here's how Swami answered that question, and it's the same answer here, which is now very, very advanced yogis can inhabit more than one body at the same time. But I'm assuming that doesn't apply to any of us. So let's talk about us. Time doesn't exist once you are at a higher dimension of reality and have expanded your consciousness where you can see multiple realms at the same time. But for those of us who cannot actually experience multiple realms simultaneously, the rules of time bind us. So at our level of consciousness, no, you can't be in two bodies at the same time. No, you can't go backwards and forwards in time. It is theoretically possible to do it, and great yogis can do it because they have liberated themselves from the limited perceptions that all of us are bound by. I can know, and I do know, that there is a reality beyond the realm of time, but I can't live in that reality. I can't time travel. I can't make the world different than it is. It's fascinating to know that it could be. Now here's a picture that, let me see if I can make this work here. If you think of time as a wheel like this and going sequentially, and future's down here and past is up there and I'm over here on the side of it, what actually happens is even if the wheel spins, the center has a different reality to it. When we expand our consciousness, we move toward the center. We move toward the center of superconsciousness. And if you're stuck on the rim of the wheel, you can hardly see forward or backward. And that's where most people live. As you begin to expand your consciousness and get toward the center of your origin point, which is to say the divine within you, that's what meditation can do for you, introspection, higher, all the experiences that give you higher consciousness. You move from the rim of the wheel closer to the center. And if you're a few inches in from the edge of the rim, you will see that in a triangle, your vision will expand. You can look and you'll see more of the cycle. So as you get closer to the center of your own being, your understanding of reality begins to expand. You can begin to see very simply what you did in the past that's causing the present, what you can do in the present that will change the future. So you become less trapped in the limitations of time, but you're still bound by those laws until you reach the center of absolute superconsciousness. And then anything is possible. That's the best I can answer that from my level of awareness. Okay.
Okay, so there are more questions, but I think we'll just
Hmm.
kind of just do one or two more depending on how long the answer is. But Richard asks, how can I feel more of my heart? Why am I unable to feel my heart's energy? This person also meditates.
Um, habit. Our consciousness is created by the energy pattern in the chakras. The energy pattern in the chakras is the cumulative result of every thought, action, experience, feeling that we've had in all of our incarnations. So wherever we find ourselves now is simply because of what we've been doing up until this minute. And so a good way to think, a good word for that is momentum. If you're in your automobile and you're driving it super fast and you're going 90 miles an hour and you suddenly realize you've just sailed past the exit where you need to get off, you know where you're trying to go, but you've created so much momentum that that momentum has to be reversed before you can go where you're trying to go. So if you're having difficulty being in tune with your feeling nature, which is what I'm going to assume you mean by the heart, it's because you have set up so much momentum thinking it will make you happier to not be aware of those feelings and to run your life from another aspect of your own nature. But all it is a habit. A little techie problem here for a moment. Are we settled? The way that we make it different is we simply start putting energy into the opposite way. So if you're having difficulty being connected with your heart, then start making that a priority in every situation that you're in. Relate more to children, relate more to babies, relate to insects, spend time looking at a tree, notice the fruit growing on a fruit tree if you can. I was recently where there were these huge red and black poppies, and there were bees in going into the poppies, and just to be there because I'm intellectually oriented. I like intellectual content. The bee really had nothing to say to me on the level that I often relate, but I spent a very long time just watching the bee and just thinking about what it would be like to be a bee and trying to understand why he went to one flower and not to another and how he felt about his fellow bees. I mean, just consciously using whatever tools you do have, try to just expand your aura into areas that is not so natural to you when you're with people, instead of just listening to what they say or thinking about what they look like. Try to sense, what is it like to be you? I was crossing the street and this car went by me and this man was driving his car and he had a lot of energy and there was a woman and next to him is an older man and I thought, I wonder where he's going. I wonder who's waiting for him. I wonder if where he's going is a happy place. I wonder if the people will be glad to see him. Is he a nice man? Is he not a nice man? In other words, I was just trying to feel his reality. And if you make that a practice, you will gradually change the momentum. It's as simple as that. It's not easy, however. You see, this is the difference. When something is not easy, we think it must be complicated. It isn't complicated, it's quite simple. It's just not easy. So just begin, and you'll find it'll be different.
Thank you, Asha. I think this will be our final question for
Okay.
today. Thank you, everybody, for your amazing questions. But basically, how can I expand my consciousness? What exactly do I need to do?
Um, let's see, how do you expand? Well, of course, there's countless spiritual practices. I encourage you, read Autobiography of a Yogi. I'm going to tell you what's worked for me. Read Autobiography of a Yogi, the blue original version of Autobiography of a Yogi. Read books about saints and masters. I spent when I was first starting all of this, I just read through the whole section of saints and masters. How did other people expand their consciousness? And from everybody, I learned a little something. Read inspiring biographies about people who have expanded their awareness. Get in tune with their consciousness. If possible, find a spiritual practice that really works for you and begin to do it. Get into good company. Don't hang out with people who are drinking and drugging and overindulging in countless ways and just shrinking their consciousness. Be with people who are committed. Good company is enormously important. Find a group of people you can meditate with, that you can do yoga practices, that you can go out in nature. How do you spend your time? What kind of music do you listen to? Is the music that you listen to pounding beats like this that are constantly bringing you back to ego awareness, or are you listening to things that uplift you? What does your home look like? What colors are you using? What kind of art do you have on the wall? Do you have pictures of masters and saints that you can look into their eyes and draw their consciousness into you? Are you communing inwardly with those who do have expanded consciousness? Any of these things will get you started. And the more your consciousness expands, the more the magnetism of your chakras will change and the more new opportunities will come to you. It, do something. Change your thought into action. Be intelligent about the choices that you make. Pay attention to the results. If there's people around you whose consciousness you admire and wish to emulate, find out what they're doing and see if you can become part of what they're doing. Choose good company. Separate yourself from those things that pull you down. But you can't do everything at the same time. Sometimes people try to do everything at the same time, and as a consequence, do nothing. Do one small thing and do it well, and then do the next small thing and do it as well, and the next, and the next, and the next. Make achievable goals. Just make achievable goals, succeed in them, and then keep going on. And be courageous and have fun. Just be on an adventure. I'm on an adventure to expand my consciousness. What are we going to do today? When you wake up in the morning, say to Divine Mother, okay, I want to be more than I am. Help me, help me. Open the doors. Show me the way. Give me the wisdom and the courage and the energy to go forward. And
Okay, so Richard is saying that he felt his question was cut in half. So I'm going to ask the full question, and perhaps maybe I misunderstood his question, and this will be the final one. But what he writes is how to harmonize the silent witness state and the heart. I rarely feel anything from the heart space. Why?
because you're not in the habit of thinking about your heart. It's a muscle that you haven't used very much. If you try to do anything with muscles you haven't used very much, or if you try to sing and you're not trained to sing, or lift weights and you have a small body, you're not going to be able to do it very well. So your heart is undeveloped. That's why you don't feel very much. For whatever reason, in up until this time, you haven't prioritized feeling with your heart. So the energy, you don't have that much energy there, or you've blocked the energy for reasons I don't know you, so I don't know all the details. But one way or another, you are not in the habit of using your heart. So you need to start using it. You can't start by saying, I want to be this and this and this. You have to say, how can I move toward being this and this and this? And you just need to start training yourself in, and you have to start with achievable goals. If you say, I want to be this and I'm not, well, you have to close the space between those two things. And you close the space. You see, we have to know how high the mountain is. We have to know that the peak is way up there. But we don't get to the peak by looking at the peak. We get to the peak by looking at where our feet are. And there's the peak, and there are my feet. Oh, so what I do is I lift up this foot and I move it, and I move both feet. But I don't seem to be any closer to the peak, but you are. And the only way you're going to get there is to know where the peak is and where your feet are. So the peak that you want for this great experience from your heart, but you can't get it just by trying to force yourself into it. You have to say, I need to train the muscle that's going to take me there.
Okay, I think that is all. Would you
All
like to
right.
add anything else, Asha?
No, thank you for your questions. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I say that because I consider it to be a great privilege to be able to share these teachings, and I'm very gratified that others are interested, and I'm also very happy for your sake. For this reason, um, I vividly remember, even though it was 50 years ago, what my life was like before I had these teachings as a pole star. And so my deepest and heartfelt prayer is that even a little bit of anything that I've said will spark that kind of change in your life as well. Bless you.